welcome back to Just Code It. Today we're going to be taking a look at path parameters in FastAPI. To start out, we're going to do our imports like always. We have a few today. It's from enums, typing, Pydantic, and then FastAPI, and then Scarlet Response, I'm pretty sure. We're going to create that app with the title, description, and version, and then we're going to jump down here a little bit just to get the app running. Create the root path where we're going to load that index.html file, or you can just return a JSON. Doesn't really matter, but just so it's nicer for you to look at, I created a little HTML and we're just returning it. And then you're going to want to run the app, which I'm currently running. We'll reload it. If you go all the way to the bottom, there'll be a name main if statement, importing unicorn, and then doing the unicorn run in quotes, main.app, and then host, port, log level, and reload. Start out, we're going to do a little bit of setting everything up, creating a few data models, and then creating an in-memory database, just basically some objects that we can work with. We're going to start by creating this enums and data models. So the first class we're going to create is one called video category, which is going to inherit from enum. We're just going to create a little enum, tech equals tech, game, music, you can put whatever you want in there. These are basically going to be drop-down selectors in the documentation, or it helps with the validation so people can only submit the enum values. Next, we're going to create a Pydantic model called video, which basically, the great thing about Pydantic is it works really well with databases as well. But you can basically define how you want the data to look, and it will validate it for you. So we'll have an ID, which is an int, a title of string. Then we have description, which is optional, and it has a max length to it, also a string. Then here we are actually using the enum class to define the type. So it has to abide by the type of the enum, and it has to line up with one of these enums basically. Views must be non-negative integer, and then likes must also be a non-negative integer. So those are the two kind of data models and databases that we're going to be using. But quickly after that, we're just going to generate a few test cases. I'll walk through this in a second. I'm actually going to move this up to here. So here you can create as many of these as you want, but here we're just generating some examples to use. We're just making an object and then defining video, ID, title, description, just giving it what it needs. And we're just making a list of them. Nothing too fancy. Okay, going down, we already covered root endpoint. What's next? Fetching all the videos. Okay. So this is going to be where we're actually starting to get into using these path parameters. To create a path parameter, you do, for this method, we're doing a get because we're getting things from the server. What we're doing is passing it the path. So if you go to this URL, that's like sending a get request to that. And the response is going to be a list of video objects. Makes sense. Then we just have our documentation in there. We can minimize that. And we're just returning the first 10, just in case if you had a lot of videos that you made. Now, if we want to take a look at this in action, I have a little extension that makes this look a little nicer, but here it is. Basically, all we're doing here is creating a list of the video values. Now we're going to start adding some parameters to it with getting a video by its ID. This method will only retrieve a single video by the ID, and it will return an error if no video is found. To define a dynamic value in a path, you can use the brackets and then the variable name, and then also define it within the method call. Here we also gave it a type. Just when making APIs, it's good to always give a type. You don't have to, but it's a good practice. Just makes sterilizing all the data coming in a lot easier. And we're going to set it equal to the path. After defining the declarator, we then do an async function and called getVideo with the video ID, and then set it equal to the path. These dots mean it's required. This is a constraint to make sure it's greater than 0, and then just the description. If the video ID is not in the videos, we're going to return a 404 error, basically, video not found. If it is in there, we're going to return videos by the ID. So that's basically, if we go back up to the videos, looking at these and grabbing the IDs, we want to take a look at this in action. We're just using ID1, which is the FastAPI tutorial. Get videos by category method has 3 parameters. We have the category, the limit, which is the number of videos returned, between 10 and then just a description. And then the next one is skip. Default is 0, has to be greater than 0 or equal to 0, and description. A skip parameter is used a lot in pagination. Basically what it does is it skips X number of videos in this case before returning. So if you had 10 videos and the default is 5, it would skip the first 5 videos and then return the next 5. Can be useful. I use it a lot when honestly requesting from APIs where I'm just collecting data. I use a random integer pagination basically, so I'm not requesting the same data every day. So I jump around all over the place throughout dates. After defining the method, we can come down here to the filtering aspect of it. So we're going to filter the videos. Basically, we're just going to go through all the videos using some list comprehensions and see if the category equals the category. If it does, we're going to add it to the list. And we're going to return the paginated data. So we're going to take those filter datas, and then we're just going to slice up that data frame or that list going from skip to limit. So basically grabbing that whole chunk. So basically the limit would be 10 by default, and then the skip, if it was 5, it would be 5 plus 10. To see what pagination does, we can also just click this URL. Basically just returns the JSON. Forgot to mention this earlier. There's 2 types of documentation you can use on FastAPI. You have the just /docs. So if you just go the URL /docs, you get, I think this is Swagger UI, but you can try out some of these ones. So you can see we have the video by ID. We can try it out, add one, execute, and see the response. So this is useful for debugging. Also, it's just super useful because you don't have to write API documentation. But there's also another documentation that I've actually started using a little bit as well. They're called REDocs. I'm not sure what the underlying, so I guess it uses Redocly. Never heard of that before, but like the UI of this a bit more. Looks like Redoc doesn't allow you to actually execute it. I guess that is a miss on it. But you can download the Open API specification, which is useful. And you can import that into Postman and stuff like that. But there's 2 documentation ways of viewing it. Also, you can just do it through the URL, but I might stick to this for the remainder of the video. Here we can try this one out. We already have the default values, and as you can see, the enum is a dropdown. Execute. Cool. Sorry for that little detour, but thought I forgot to mention that earlier. All right, now we're on section 8, which is retrieving video stats. We're probably starting to understand how this all works now. We're gonna create the path, and it's gonna be users, user ID, videos, video ID, and then stats. So the full-fledged URL will look something like this. It has 3 input parameters. We have the user ID, video ID, and then watched, which is basically just a flag, true or false. Have you watched it or not? And it can return either a dictionary or an exception, basically. And shrink this down. Again, for the paths, we have greater than 0 mandatory, default false, and then the descriptions for them, checking if the video ID is in the videos, turning exception otherwise, and then returning an object with some information about the video and the user. To take a look at this, we can just run this, and as you can see, returns that user, video ID, and then information about the video. After that, we have creating a video entry. To do this, we're going to define another path using a declarator. Only difference is this one has a response model as a input variable, basically just giving it what data types it needs to follow. And then to create it, you pass it a video object, and it creates a new video object, finds the max key, adds it, creates that new video ID, and then returns the video. Now, if we go to our documentation, probably reload. Yep, here we have the post. We're posting data to the server, and we can execute. And our response body was ID. And then another way to look at this would be, let's look at our, I guess I don't have this in a debug. I was going to say I could stop the execution. We could actually see the videos list. Well, I guess we should just come up here and get all the videos again. So, yep, we have that new one. And last but not least, this is an edge case one, but it comes up enough that I thought I would cover it. Last but not least, we're going to take a look at how to pass file paths in URL parameters, because if you think about it, it looks a lot like a file path, and honestly, they are file paths. So passing them can be a little tricky, but there's a specific way that you have to pass them. How you pass them is you define the variable, and then you basically set it to a type, which is a path. But then out here, you set it to a string. So basically, internally, it's setting it to a path, but externally, it's still a string. And yep, passes, and then we'll check if it exists, and then open it and return it. I don't have any example files for this one, but here you can see you could pass it a file and then execute. That's about it. If you're enjoying these FastAPI videos, let me know. I'm also thinking of other ideas or other tutorial series I could do. So let me know if you want me to do one. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.